Cool. Annie Olufuwa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We met like last week, 2 weeks ago, last week, something, I don't know. It's been a week.
I think it was about a week ago on Thursday at the Expo.
Yeah, so now it's Saturday, so it's a week and 2 days.
Yeah.
And you know what I love about people like you is we go, hey, let's do a podcast. Yeah, let's do a podcast. A week later, we're podcasting.
Yeah, no messing.
It's like no messing around. You are the storytelling lady. This is your shtick, your vibe, your everything. And when I saw your stand at that expo, and then I think I might have grabbed a brochure or I might have looked you up online, and I looked and I was like, hey, finally, I'm finding someone that goes along the storytelling vibe. And you get guys that do it, you know, like the Justin Cohens of the world and whatever else, and they talk about telling your story when you're selling and whatnot. And you hear it, but you don't see it maybe a heck of a lot in South Africa because we're all like, here's my product, buy my product, short put. You know, like that's kind of how sales works. And that's how I've experienced a lot of people, even when they try and sell me, it's, well, I've got a product. I'm like, okay, but tell me who you are, you know? So why the storytelling? What's the whole purpose behind it? You know, like why should we be telling stories?
Well, you've built that up pretty well. And it is to do with, especially in the world of sales, focusing on the benefits rather than the features. So because people buy benefits rather than features, they like to know how it works for them from an emotional point of view and from some sort of aspiration they've got or a problem that they need to solve. And the reason that you focus on stories is because it illustrates that so much more clearly and effectively than just talking about the features. I always use the example of buying an electric drill. You know, some guy goes into the shop and wants an electric drill, and you can talk about the fact that it's got a nice long lead and it's got all these different attachments and it's got a nice grip. But when you're talking to the guy and you ask him why he wants it, and he says, well, my wife wants to put pictures up, or the cabinets are falling down, it's giving me a hard time. What he actually wants is kind of something that makes his wife happy and the home look beautiful.
Yes.
So you tell a story that kind of brings that into it. And then you're starting to get into the benefits, and the person can hear the story and say, now it's hit the spot for me. And that's what storytelling is all about from a sales perspective.
Yeah, concise. You're like a professional, man.
I should be if I'm trying to get other people to do this.
So, I mean, you say we're focusing on features. I heard you also at some point, I don't know if you're chatting with someone, but like it comes up a lot with sales and whatnot, is you're solving problems. And so is the story thing just well, let's get people on our side so they can buy my stuff? Or, where's the line between we just winding a yarn here, or whatever like spinning a yarn versus, well, no, actually I'm invested in you, and there's always a shadow to every mountain.
Yes.
And you always get those unscrupulous types.
Yes, I mean, with great power comes great responsibility.
Little Spider-Man quote there.
I had to get that in there because I often use that when I talk about storytelling. It is a very powerful way at getting people to get on board and to buy into your idea. It's incredibly persuasive. So you do have to be ethical when you do it. But my process involves looking at what stories tell us, as well as what stories to tell. And I think that's what differentiates me from a lot of people who are storytelling specialists, because for me, it's the input as well as the output. And where I'm going with this is that once I work with a team or an individual and we start to explore the stories, it works from the inside of you in terms of unlocking belief in what you're selling and really getting behind yourself and backing yourself. There's nothing more convincing to you than your own story in terms of overcoming things like imposter syndrome, feeling unsure if you've got a viable product. When you start analyzing your stories, your origin stories, for example, you get that moment when you say, wow, this is good. What I'm doing here is great. And that often translates into, now when I'm telling a story, I'm going to do that with honor and with ethically, because I have that belief and passion in what I'm doing. So there is this kind of moment of personal inspiration in storytelling that translates into, I'm going to do a good job for the client that I'm working for. I want them to get the best out of it because I believe in it. So that's part of the process.
Well, it's that old adage: people buy people, not products.
Exactly.
And I've seen it just in my sales career. So I'm because you've met me, so you know that I'm a storyteller. I'm just constantly, you're chatting and say, oh yes, and now this happened, oh yeah, and that, and you weave this. I mean, I feel like you kind of sell yourself a little bit along with your product, and you sell that solution that you've got to the problem, and when you weave all of these things together, you come across, especially if you believe in it. And I'm happy you brought up belief, because I've been in sales my whole life, and I've joined companies, worked there for like 2 or 3 months, and then gone, I don't believe in this.
Yes.
I don't believe in this. The way they do business is not the way I like, or maybe there's a little bit of something that just doesn't sit right. And then and South Africa, without the job markets that we kind of want, this is not England, or it's not the US or Canada or Australia. We sometimes don't even have a choice.
Yes.
But it's, I love the storytelling.
Good point.
I love it.
And, on that note, you talk about belief, and we have these wonderful business gurus such as Simon Sinek, who starts with why. That's how you get to your why, unpacking stories. And that's part of building up that wonderful, unshakable belief in what you do. But also carrying on from that topic of when you're telling a story and making sure you're doing that with honesty and integrity and transparency. I often say to people, it's not just storytelling, it's story listening. And that's also a component that doesn't always come across with a lot of when people think about storytelling. In order to know what stories to tell in a client conversation or a business meeting or a networking situation, you have to do a lot of active listening to other people's stories, because then you tune in to exactly what they need. You tune in to exactly what pain points they have, and you tune into who they are as a person. And then because of the way stories work in the brain, you do build up empathy when you listen to their stories. So you listen, you know what they want, and you do start to care about them as well. That's the way stories work. So that overcomes the temptation to just be very surface and superficial. So storytelling is as much about story listening, and I always emphasize that over and over again to people.
I'm busy learning it as I podcast. So for me, the toughest part when I started this is I talk. And it's to now sit and listen to people. It's great. You kind of that active listening thing. Because I'm sitting in my head and I'm going, okay, cool. We need to keep the conversation going. It needs to be relaxed and whatever. I need to not try and trap people into these, impossible questions. And it's like, okay, where are we going next and whatever else. And it's a skill that you have to actually, I don't know, cultivate on a almost a daily basis, because it's very easy to run in and go, hi, I sell computers and you need a computer because I'm going to solve your problems and your internet will work if you come with me and listen to me and this and that. But the guy's going, yeah, dude, we can't connect to the copier.
If you let me get a word in.
The internet is sure. I mean, great, thank you. But right now, I can't print my tender, or I can't print my quote that I need to take, or my presentation notes, or whatever the story is. And in that moment, if you just kind of shut up a little bit and just be like, how are you guys doing? I'm like, I can't print. Oh, I can fix that.
Yes. Exactly.
And now all of a sudden you've got some business, or you've got that whole kind of vibe.
Exactly. In fact, I wrote a blog about, active listening and how to know what stories to tell. And I did this, 5 steps that you need to take. And the first step was shut up. So
Love it.
because if you're talking all the time, you don't know what people need. And also there's this concept, it's a technique called a mirror story. And the mirror story is you tell a story that mirrors the story that you've just heard. So if you do, storytelling sort of intentionally, and you build up what we call a story bank, which is what I help my clients do, you will have this mental library of stories that you can pull from your mental shelf and drop appropriately depending on what you're hearing. So if you listen, then you should be able to say, I've got a mirror story in my head that really reflects back to you that I understand, that I care, and that I can solve your problem. And that's the story I'm going to drop. The only way you know what story to mirror is if you listen.
You're a dating coach. Seriously, that's what you are, because this is the game. Neil Strauss, he wrote that the Game, which is that famous sort of book for guys on how to get girls, and he famously chatted with like Britney Spears and kind of had her, almost, kind of thing. But that's what it sounds like almost is, and I've drawn this line myself, is when you go for that first meeting, it's a first date. It's you're going in, you're trying to suss each other out, you're trying to tell them that you're actually a nice guy or a nice girl. You mirror stories, you do that as well in the whole dating thing. So you're just a business dating coach.
Yeah, you've blown my mind right now. That is very, very cool indeed. I'm never going to look at networking again the same way.
Speed dating. That's all networking is.
It's like actually speed dating for business. I think that's a wonderful concept. I'm going to see how I can actually build that into some kind of package.
There's your next keynote. Next keynote
ideal
address.
Partner, get that spark, because it is, isn't it? Finding that spark with each other and like, I can do business with you.
Well, that's how I get referrals, for instance, in my business that I run, and even the podcast. So I get people that will phone me up or message me and go, "Hey, Des, I've got this person. You really need to talk to this person." And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But they're not doing that unless they like me, unless they trust that I'm going to do it well, because their name gets attached, to this whole thing. And you look even in business, so it's more important. I've just joined BNI. You part of BNI as well, and the first thing, you go through the initial stages, and they're like, when you do the interview, they ask you, do you have people that you can refer to, the other people in your group, and for business and whatnot? And I sat back and I was like, yes, I do, because we have clients. And then it was like, but hold on, I've got a big responsibility towards my clients because they trust me, and it's now like, okay. And then you look at the structure of how they do, like every week the BNI does the meetings, everyone gets a chat, and you network and you speed date, for lack of a better term maybe, and then you start knowing the people, So like I'm in IT, I've met the cybersecurity lady in my chapter, and one of our biggest clients can use the service. But that's one of my biggest clients. You have to get to know the person first, and it's a thing of, cool, sit down with people, hear their stories, tell your stories, find the synergy, do the thing, figure out who they are, and then you kind of move. Once you build some trust, I suppose,
And the reason I love that analogy, I am a storyteller. So when I listen to these things, these are stories you're telling. You don't even realize that these are actual micro stories.
Yes.
That all these little episodes and anecdotes are micro stories, and they all teach us something. And then you can extrapolate from that. So when you came up with this wonderful metaphor of speed dating, my mind actually starts to run ahead. Like once the date is successful and you start your relationship and you're a certain length of time down the line, you get to what? The proposal. Mm-hmm. And the proposal also has that double meaning in a proposal of marriage, if it's a romantic relationship. But if you're getting to sitting down at the table with a company that's interested in making a significant booking with you, then you're proposing as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
And
well,
then,
maybe you go like one step before that, and it's okay, cool, we're going to do business, but maybe we should date for a little while. Let's talk. It's not exclusive yet, but we'll go for a few dinners. And then you get to that point where it's like, okay, well now we're exclusive and we're operating whatever else, and then it's like, proposal time, and you sit down and go, okay, well now let's do business.
Yes.
Let's not just flirt at it.
But where I was going with it is that from the proposal meeting that you have, there is, for example, you might be in a situation where you are competing with other people on a bid, and there's going to be an element of negotiation. Yeah. So where I was going with it is that's when you also apply a story to help give you that edge in that negotiation situation. That's also something that I coach people on how to do. And again, you get all your ducks in a row in all the other components of negotiation, but the difference maker is if you have stories to illustrate all the different components of that proposal. So that's also where I
like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we've got the technology. I was sitting the other day with the technical guys at my supplier, and we had a laugh because we saw this and that and that and that, and then when we learned this, cool. And then it's like, oh, my sales staff, or my technical staff, and you to have an anecdote about that to show how they went above and beyond, or, well, they had a flat tire, but they changed it on the side of the road and still drove out after hours to help the clients, and that's what I really like about so and so, and it builds that whole thing.
Offsets objections, offsets worry about delivery. It gives assurances that you're going to keep your promises. It actually illustrates how you will cope with problems, how you offset risk. All of that can be communicated with a story very, very effectively, as well as instead of just saying, yes, we will make sure that everything's okay. It sinks into the consciousness in a different way, especially if you're competing with other people for a particular contract.
Yeah, I think it almost is a great litmus test for authenticity as well, because you can tell a story. I can tell you I'm from Mars. I moved here 3 years ago, and you're like, what? And I can tell you a story with all the sincerity in the world, or maybe put on sincerity or whatever else. And I think as you get to know people, like you get into a new social circle, you meet everyone, and the first thing, oh, hi, I'm Des here. Okay, yes, I'm a podcast and an IT sales guy. Okay, cool. And then the next bri, it's like, oh yeah, so what exactly do you do? Oh, well, okay, so we handle this and this and this and this. But when you got that one, everyone knows that one guy who cruises in there like, oh, now I'm a diamond dealer, really, like, or whatever, and then it's you chat, and eventually you're like, hey, hold on, there's some cracks here.
It's not passing the smell test.
Yes. Or the other side of it is like, wow, this oak is just genuine. Wow, okay, I want to be this person's friend, and then obviously in the business setting, like, yeah, we want to be business friends.
Yes, exactly.
Storytelling is, if you go back into like archaeology type guys, they start looking in caves and they see these little pictures of, people and the spear and the antelope or the whatever it is. You've got the scientists that study like the relationship between Anthropologists, there we go. So you get anthropologists and they start looking at the past and also the current. And I met an anthropologist that was studying a fence, like literally the impact of a fence on a community. There was a farm, there was a guy that bought another property, they fenced it off, and there was now all these impacts and whatever else. And you start looking at the storytelling of it. This is as old as time. We go back many thousands of years, and all of these rock things, that's probably how our like speech and all of that kind of stuff came to be. And then we find ourselves now, which I don't think anybody sort of even 50 or 70 years ago thought that the world would all be on a computer or on a cell phone. The storytelling, does it translate into the social media?
Yes. And just the origin story of my business might help shed some light on that. The company is called Storied, STORY''D, and the tagline is Get Storied. And it started in the pandemic because people were moving from face-to-face meetings to online meetings, and this thing called Zoom started coming into our lives. And not a lot of people did that transition comfortably. We were also in lockdown, so there was that additional feeling of isolation. And what happened was that somebody just said to me, people are feeling separated in business now. They're losing that face-to-face connection, and they're struggling to get through to people with this kind of screen divide. And coinciding to that conversation was another friend who said, oh, look, I'm reading this fantastic book about storytelling for business. And then something happened in my mind when I said, stories can reach through that divide. Stories can cut that sense of isolation and separation and distance. And that's when I launched my business. So that's how it translated into a kind of a digital interface, because it was there to facilitate the sense of digital separation.
Yeah.
Because of the emotional connection you get. But then to answer the second part of your question with social media, the work that I do involves gathering stories, unpacking stories so that you can create powerful content. I work with social media people, web designers, web developers, people who are upgrading their websites. They come to me because they want that powerful content to put on these interfaces. So the storytelling process is to find those stories, unpack them, and then you can use them incredibly effectively to design your campaigns. If you're launching a product, if you want to build your personal brand, if you want to upgrade your LinkedIn profile, if you want to have a series of blogs for your website, the storytelling process harvests the stories, finds the themes that fit with the goal, the business goal you've got, and creates the compelling content to send out into the world.
And what about the noise? I mean, do you look at, so Gary Vaynerchuk famously said, I use Gary V so much, but I love the guy.
Me too.
So Gary V said many, many, many years ago, the marketers ruin everything. They'll take something great. Facebook started with, okay, fine. Facebook started because a bunch of guys were trying to look at girls and get dates. That's how it started, But it turned into a way of sort of communicating with your family overseas and being able to find that friend from school that you really enjoyed having lunch with, and that kind of thing. It was just a communication type thing almost. And then now, many moons later, if you try and run like lead generation type marketing or something on Facebook, it doesn't matter. There's 5 bajillion other people there doing the same thing. There's noise, there's colorful videos and pop-ups or banners and all this kind of jazz. And then, like people are getting really creative, because the other day I saw this like 3D type fox thing with like his cool glasses on, and the guys are selling like some financial product. And I'm like, how does this cartoon character translate to bank with us, because we're a serious bank? And it's just attention grab. I'm assuming the stories, if you've got the right story and it's structured the right way, because there's a lot to, if you go into, we want to do a TikTok channel, and then they're like, okay, you need a hook, and you need a this, and then you need a that, and then you need a that, and you've got to almost structure out, and you've got to put a bit of thought into it, huh?
Yes, you have to put a bit of thought into it, and it's getting harder and harder because the world is getting noisier and noisier. As you quite rightly say, we're bombarded with multiple touch points of advertising everywhere we go from the moment we open our eyes. But I've got a story that might illustrate the way stories can cut through that. I can't remember if it was the Harvard Business School. You'll have to Google this, but it's something that I researched, and it's a true event where they got 20 students to pitch a product to each other in a business class that they were studying, course they were taking. And they asked one student to tell a story and the rest of them just to do a standard pitch. And then I think a month later, they asked the same 20 students, what do you remember? And it was something like 87% of them said, I remember the guy that told the story.
Yeah.
And that, you can research that actually happened. And the reason I'm telling that story is to illustrate how stories cut through the noise. Because of the way they operate in the brain, because when you hear a story, there are certain neurological events, such as the hormones that pump into your brain. It is incredibly potent in terms of memory and making something memorable. And it does stem from the survival needs that we had back in our cavemen days.
Yeah.
That's why we're wired in our DNA level to remember stories. When we had to tell each other, there's a big bad lion over there, but there's nice food over there, and here's a story to help us, communicate that. So we're wired to remember stories. So that's why in that class they were able to remember that one story. And that's why it also gives you the edge in cutting through this increasingly noisy world.
Yeah, I did. I think you've heard a little bit of the stuff at the expo that I spoke about and whatnot. And one of the stories I'm telling at the moment is, so the secondary thing, which I haven't launched, but in the next couple of weeks, I'm launching an addition to the podcast. And so the podcast is called Grow a Pair. And then the addition to it is called Growing a Pair, where I go out and I do what the person that I've interviewed on the podcast does. And so I recently went to KZN and I was with a mate of mine. We interviewed him and he's a snake handler. So we did a video where I handled a green mamba. Right. So I actually held it on a hook stick.
I take it that's poisonous.
Oh, very, yes. Or venomous, actually.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah. So,
sorry.
Yeah. Poisonous is something you ingest. Poison that you ingest. Venom is injected.
Either one I don't want.
Yeah, either one you don't want. Yeah, but yes, it's a life-ending snake. That kind of thing. And for me, the story that I tell, because in that moment, Lance, who is the genius snake handler that was with me, he was like coaching me through this thing. And we started with some baby snakes and some nicer ones to play with. And we ended with, the green mamba was the second to last one. And he had another hook stick. And he was like, okay, Des, when you grab this thing's tail and hold it here, it's going to try and wrap around your hand. So the first thing you need to do is just don't drop it, but just loosen yourself as you're holding this snake. So that, because if it gets the purchase on you, like, if you grab someone, and you've got a good grip, you can launch yourself towards them, right? Like, or if you grab, like you're climbing a ladder or, whatever else you grab and you can launch it. The same with the snake. They can then launch themselves. So he was like, make sure he doesn't get the grip. So I'm like, well, I didn't know that. And then I'm holding it and he's watching the snake and little movements. And he's like, okay, cool. The snake's going to move like this now. And he's like, well, hold on. Let's just move his head over here. Because the snake was turning, would have fallen off the hook stick, And like in that moment, this is like what I gained out of it. In that moment, I realized, I do exactly this for my clients. I go to them and they are working with a system or whatever. And I'm like, hey, so just watch out now. Don't click that link on that email because it's a phishing scam, and it's I'm the guy with the other hook stick.
And it will bite you.
Yeah. And that thing will bite you. So, and I was like, gosh, I was literally driving from Natal back to Cape Town. And this whole thing formulated in my head. I'm like, I've got another story to tell.
That's brilliant.
And I told the story at a couple of meetings and a few networking things I was at. And I saw a person, the person actually saw me later, like a week or two later. And they're like, hey, you that green mamba guy, you're telling that story about the green mamba and your IT business. And I'm like, this stuff works.
Yeah.
That's
a perfect illustration of how it works. Because also it was such stories are about conflict and solving problems and avoiding things you don't want. So that's got this, as I was listening to that, I could see it in my mind. Because,
your eyes were getting bigger.
Because it's visual. I can see this green snake. I can see your arm and I can see the stick so it's visual. So that's also what helps the memory process. But just as a metaphor for avoiding problems in IT, it's genius. I mean, that's exactly how it works.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I've always loved telling stories. The guys that have met me at networking events are always like, we can barely keep this guy quiet, because I enjoy it. It's fun, and you get to find out about people as well, because you tell your funny story, and then they tell their funny story or whatever it is, and you start discovering what people do, deep down.
Exactly.
And we had a meeting on Friday. Same kind of deal. We're just chatting away. And I mean, I'm an IT guy in a networking group and they know I'm the IT guy. And this lady had dropped her computer, broken the screen. And in her head, she'd written it off. She's just like, oh, well, we're not going to be able to fix it. And somebody else in the group, I was taking the breath to go but, and someone else was like, but we have the IT guy. And it's like, and I haven't told all my story yet. I'm a week in or whatever into that group, so, and I'm like, okay, I need to expand every single week. I've got to tell a different aspect of my business because sometimes people don't know what you do. And you can say, well, I do IT. And they go, oh, okay. Yeah. So you you give us computers. Well, I don't need a computer. What I need is my printer. The printer's not working, but I do that. Well, oh, okay. You've got to tell the stories and keep on kind of pushing.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And your story bank is a portfolio of things that cover all the aspects that you want to communicate, and making sure that you capture the full suite of what you do, but also the nuance of how it helps people. And that's why it's very good to have those stories to hand.
Yeah. So is this like should people be sitting down prepping for this?
Prepping for?
For having that bank?
Yes.
So I mean, I'm assuming now that there's potentially, and this is what you do, which is, you coach people through this process. I mean, like 17 steps, or is it going to cost people $1 million, or But I mean, I think it's an active thing. It's not a sort of, oh yeah, I suppose I should have some stories ready, and then walk into the meeting and hope you have a story for whatever people bring up.
There's an easy in to it, which is what I always start with, and that's finding your trademark story. So sitting down, if you do want to actually get started on creating, building up a whole bank, a library of stories is sort of more complicated and a longer process. But if you want to start somewhere, very easy in, find your trademark story. And how to do that is to sit down and say to yourself, what is the problem that I really want to be associated with? And I say to people, you have to have a problem that you own. And people say, what do you mean by that? Say, you have to become synonymous with a problem. You have to become the go-to person for that problem in people's minds. And yes, we're business owners. We do lots of things. We solve lots of problems. We have lots of services. But start with what you want to begin with is this is the problem that I'm all about. And then you find a trademark story that illustrates why that you are the go-to person for that problem. So start there. And what's good about that trademark story is that it is very adaptable to multiple situations, and answering when people, ask what you do. And if it's a good trademark story, it will cover a lot of the services that you cover just by implication. So start there. And then if you want to build up more stories, you can talk to me. But that's something I think that most people can sit down and think about on their own.
So that's the tip of the arrow, or the tip of the spear, is that trademark.
The trademark story.
What is it actually that you solve?
Yes.
And for me, it's productivity. That's what I sell. I mean, you're in RT. I'm like, yes. But if you've got a slow computer, if you're waiting and you hit save on that document you've just made, and you have to wait 30 seconds for the computer to, get going, you've lost 30 seconds. And if you're losing that 30 seconds every time you interact with your computer, now you're losing hours. What's your hour worth? Some people are worth thousands an hour, and you look at that and go, oh, yeah. Slow computer is costing me 20,000 Rand a month because I'm losing 1,000 Rand a day, or whatever the story is, and then, productivity.
Yes.
Oh, now it makes sense.
And tie that to an actual event, because that's where the magic really happens, sort of mentally. If you talk about a real person, we always say in storytelling, make your customer the hero. Right. So by that, you actually have a real life person who you can talk about as a character, their name, who they are. And then so marry that productivity solution with a real life study. Some people call them case studies. Case studies are basically stories.
Sure.
So tie that, once you own your problem, tie it to that a key story, your trademark story, and then you're on your way.
And you're on your way. I like that. Okay, Annie, it's relatively obvious that you didn't grow up in South Africa by your voice. Where do you come from, and what are you doing in South Africa?
I always say to people, I don't have an accent, you do.
But no, sweetheart. You are here. You have the rest of us are
okay,
we're the normal ones.
I'm outnumbered. Okay, and I'm the abnormal one. Gee, thanks for that.
But if I come visit England, then I'm the abnormal one. Then you're in home ground. Eh?
Yeah, good point. I'm from London. Born and raised in South London. So I was born in a place called Greenwich, which I'm sure a lot of people would know about.
I can't point to it on a map, but
you might have heard of it. It's a sort of by the River Thames, a sort of historical place, got lots of connections with royalty, historically, beautiful city. So I was born there, and I grew up in that area. So places like Croydon, I've lived in Kingston. These are all places in South London, Southwest London, West London. That's where I grew up. And I wanted to As a teacher, that's my background.
Okay.
That's why I have this interest and skill in communication, which is what storytelling is, because my training is as an English teacher. So when I was a newly qualified teacher, I thought, before I get sucked down into really getting my head down with my career, I want to do some traveling. And I thought, well, where do I begin? And a fellow English teacher said to me, well, I'm from Cape Town and I've got a place you can stay. Why don't you go there? And I'm like,
Free accommodation, easy decision.
yeah. And I thought, and I knew that I wanted it to be in Africa. So I thought, okay, that sounds like a good place to start. So I came over in 2010, and of course the World Cup was on. So I saw South Africa at its very best. And then while I was here, sort of an extended stay, I started volunteering with a youth development organisation called Shawco, who sent me into township areas to do teaching. I'm a drama teacher as well, so I was going into these areas. I was going into Kailicha and Manenberg, doing drama with the kids, having a wonderful time. And something clicked in my brain, and I said, I love it here. These kids need me. They appreciate what I'm doing, the response. You know, they're just like little parcels of potential, and they're hungry for chances. I'm getting emotional talking about it. I want to be here. The kids here need me more than the kids in London. And so the rest, as they say,
is history.
Yes.
That's a fantastic story. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you fell in love with the place and now you're here.
Yes.
I like it. I really like it.
Exactly.
All right, something I ask everybody that comes onto my little show is, and you had an interesting response when we spoke about it at the expo. But what does growing a pair mean to you?
Okay, I'm not going to say the response I had at the expo because it suddenly becomes sort of like certificate 18. Yes. People can imagine what I'm saying. Growing a pair, for me, I think it means that you have to identify what it is that you really want to do, even if that is outside of your comfort zone, and then taking action to make it happen. So pair implies two, but it doesn't have to be two. It can be one. It can be 12. But the emphasis is on the word growth. So moving from one state to another, and that state where you are is better, where you're moving to is better. But it also has this implication of courage and bravery and, okay, now I'm going to stretch beyond where I am and challenge myself. So that's what it means. And from a storytelling perspective, you look back to look forward. So remember early on I talked about belief. If you look back into your history, the stories that you've got that prove you can do this, there's lots of evidence in your stories that show you have the skills, talent, contacts, personal ability. All of that is evidence that you can take this step. Don't be so scared. Look back at what you can do and tell your future story. And your future story happens when you grow a pair.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So eloquent. I want to touch on one last thing. I know we are on a bit of a time crunch because you are like Captain Networking here. So you're off to another event just now. So I got to watch you get up and do a keynote speech. And it was a great speech. I enjoyed every moment of it. But what I also got to see was a little bit of beforehand. And whilst you are very confident on stage and whatnot, what I saw was just an inkling of nerves. And you're a consummate storyteller. You say you've taught and you've done drama, so you've been on stage, you've done all of this. The nerves, you seem to get past it. How do other people do that? Or how do you deal? Because some people are paralyzed with it.
Yes.
You see, like, give me a minute on your business. I'm an accountant. I'm an accountant. And then that's all they got, you know. How do you get past
the nerves with
the
public
nerves,
speaking?
Yeah, or not even public speaking, just being able to talk to people. Because, I mean, not every business person is like me, you know, that throw me in a room of strangers and I'm friends with everyone at the end of it, you know. It's like some people, they're like really good at what they do, And then now they find themselves running a business and they have to market and sell and all of this. And, there's that sticking point. I don't understand it. I've never had it. But like, how do people get past that? Or how do you get past it at least?
Well, okay. So I did, from a public speaking perspective, it does also translate equally well into a networking perspective. You have to know a topic, you be ready with a topic that you're really excited about, because excitement cuts through nerves. So if you have to talk about something, if you're going to a networking event, think what really inspires me? What do I get excited about? What do I want to share? Am I doing something? Have I got a new product? Have I got something that has happened to me recently that I'm really excited about? I'm going to talk about that, because the excitement cuts through the nerves like nothing else. It's like it carries you away. And also, if you have a story to back that up, stories tell themselves almost, because your brain knows what follows. So that cuts through the likelihood of having a brain blank, for example, and becoming tongue-tied. So have a topic that you're excited about and a story to back that up. And if it is in a public speaking perspective, of course, you have to make sure that you practice as much as possible. That also cuts down nerves immensely. And, there's lots of other practical things like, getting to the venue earlier, having a look around so you familiarize yourself with it. That makes you feel less scared. But yeah, it starts with having something that you're excited about. But I have to say that if you ever get to the stage, and I'm a theatre director, I had a theatre company in England, we used to tour, I'm a playwright as well, and I used to prepare my actors, and I always used to say to them, if you ever stop being nervous, you are not going to perform as well. So don't look upon nerves as your enemy. We used to call it the buzz. It's adrenaline, and it makes you adaptable, problem solving. You're on your toes, you're awake, you're alert. That's what nerves do for you. It heightens your performance. So don't fear nerves. Look upon them as what we call the buzz, and learn to use them.
This is almost like the line between fight and flight. It gets you, and then you're more active. Your brain fires a little faster.
Precisely.
You're a little bit. Your reactions are a bit better. You can respond better. And
if you're too scared, it can be paralyzing.
Yeah.
But a certain amount of nerves are healthy.
That's fantastic. Cool. Annie, thank you so much for coming on. This is one of the shortest ones I've done, but I know you've got to run. But thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to get you on again. We're going to do this again. We'll
much.
dive down into like more crazy stuff and maybe get into the weeds of storytelling. But it has been so great to chat to you, see the importance of storytelling, and I'm hoping that somebody watching will be able to go, that's interesting, and it just changes a life,
Yeah.
It's that little glimmer of hope in my eye always. It's just like, if we just change one person, just help one person, I can pack it all up and we're done.
Brilliant. Well, I've loved it. It's the first time I've done this, and you've made it so fun.
Yes,
and I've felt so relaxed, and so thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing how your whole thing grows. I'm really looking forward to see how we can work together. There's so much that I think we can do. So I think the world has seen nothing yet.
Cheers to that.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Lekker.
Desmond.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Cool, man.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.